Okay, something huge is happening in the business world. I'm talking about a reporting revolution that is going to fundamentally change how we see the companies we work for, buy from, and invest in.
And you know who's leading the charge? The European Union. They've rolled out a new law called the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, or CSRD for short, and it's forcing thousands of companies to pull back the curtain on their social and environmental impacts in a way they have never had to before.
So, to get our heads around this, here's the game plan. We're going to start with the big picture shift, then get into the rulebook companies have to follow. That's the ESRS. From there, we'll zoom right in on one key area, how a company treats its own people, to see the kind of wild data they have to share. And finally, we'll talk about why all this new transparency is such a massive deal.
All right, let's dive right in with Section 1, the big shift. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, you really have to understand the why behind all this, the massive change in thinking that's driving this whole new world of corporate reporting.
Honestly, this is the perfect way to think about it. For years, companies could just publish these glossy, feel-good reports with whatever data made them look good. Well, not anymore. Now, just like you can compare the sugar in two different cereals, you'll be able to compare how different companies treat their employees or manage their carbon footprint. It is an absolute game changer.
And this right here is the law that's making it all happen. The Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the CSRD. You should think of this as the top-level command. It's the law that says, hey, companies, you must report on your sustainability impacts, and from now on, you're all going to do it the exact same way.
Which brings us perfectly to our next section. Because if the CSRD is the law telling companies what they have to do, then the European Sustainability Reporting Standards, or ESRS, are the detailed instructions on exactly how they're supposed to do it.
Yep, the ESRS are the super detailed rulebook. It's a massive set of standards that breaks down precisely what info needs to be collected and reported. And it's all structured around that framework you've probably heard of, ESG, environmental, social, and governance.
Now, when you look at this, what's just wild is the sheer scope of it all. You've got these general standards that apply to everyone. Then you have a whole list of specific environmental standards, things like climate, pollution, water. And super important for us today, you have the social standards, including the one we're going to focus on, S1, the own workforce.
Okay, before we go any deeper, we have to talk about this one crucial concept, double materiality. See, in the past, companies really only reported on stuff that could hurt their profits. That's financial materiality. But now, they also have to report on things where their business has a big impact on the world, whether it hits their bottom line or not. So it's a two-way street now, super important.
All right, that's enough theory. Let's make this real. To see how this actually works, we're going to zoom in on one specific standard, ESRS S1, which is all about a company's own workforce.
This standard is designed to reveal, in detail, how a company manages its most valuable asset, its people. We're talking everything from pay and working conditions to health and safety for all the employees and contractors who work directly for that company.
And this is a really important distinction the rules make. The ESRS actually splits workers into two groups. You've got the own workforce under Standard S1, that's your direct employees, contractors, and so on. Then there are workers in the value chain under S2. That's people way farther down the line, like workers in a supplier's factory. For today, we are sticking with S1.
Okay, now for the really juicy stuff. This is where it all gets real. Let's look at the specific, non-negotiable pieces of data that companies are now forced to share with the entire world.
So, what are we actually talking about here? What do companies really have to put on the table? Well, the level of detail is just unprecedented, and it gets right to the very heart of how a company values its people.
First up is a huge one. Companies now have to disclose whether or not their employees receive an adequate wage. And this isn't about meeting the legal minimum. We're talking about a wage that can actually support a worker and their family with a decent standard of living. They have to answer yes or no and show how they figured it out.
Then there's this. No more hiding behind vague global numbers. Companies now have to break down their total number of employees, country by country, for their 10 biggest locations. A simple table like this makes it impossible to hide where your workforce is really located, and it gives so much context to all the other data. Of course, they had to tackle the gender pay gap. But here's the thing, this isn't about some vague promise to do better. It's about publishing a hard number based on a very specific, mandated formula. And this is the exact formula they have to use.
Notice it's the unadjusted gender pay gap. That means it's the raw difference in average pay between all men and all women, period. No excuses for roles or seniority. It's just a stark, top-line number that's pretty hard to explain away.
And then there's this one, which is just, wow, talk about a measure for inequality. Companies have to report the ratio of what their single highest paid person makes compared to the median pay for everybody else. That number is going to put a massive spotlight on internal pay gaps.
And it's not just about the money. The standards get really serious about health and safety. We're talking hard data. The number of workplace fatalities, the rate of accidents, the number of days lost because of injuries. These aren't abstract figures. These are real, human metrics.
Okay, so after that blitz of data points, let's zoom back out. You might be asking yourself, why? Why does forcing companies to publish all these numbers actually matter? What's the end game here?
Well, it's all designed to kick off this incredible chain reaction. First, companies have to release this standardized data. That gives all of us, investors, employees, customers, a way to compare apples to apples for the first time. That insight leads to accountability. And that accountability is what will finally push real changes in how companies behave, where people invest their money, and even public policy.
Look, at the end of the day, this is so much more than just a bureaucratic, box-ticking exercise. It's about completely changing the definition of what a successful company looks like. For the very first time, a company's social performance is going to be just as visible and just as important as its financial performance.
And that's what it all comes down to, right? It leaves us with this huge, fascinating question for the future. As all this data starts pouring out into the open, we are going to see very clearly who the real leaders are and who's been hiding behind empty promises all along. The age of transparency is here.